We are here with the Almighty Sheik, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He's wrestled in Puerto Rico, Japan, all over the US, Canada, I believe. And he is also the owner of PCW Ultra, which is one of the top promotions right now in the United States, and probably right up there, and a lot of people would say it's the top promotion in California right now. So to start this off, could you tell us a bit about where you were born and what your childhood was like?
Sure. I was born in Amityville, New York. I moved to Florida in 1977. I was born in 74. I moved to Florida in 77. When I got to Florida, I saw Championship Wrestling from Florida on the TV, and begged my mom and dad to take me. They took me Monday night. They had Monday Night Wrestling at the West Palm Beach Auditorium. And the first time I saw wrestling was Dusty Rhoads, Harley Race, the Briscoes, the Funks. So I saw the Florida territory, which I feel is the best territory of all time. Could be biased, obviously, but the greatest, wrestlers of all time, the greatest psychology, the blood and guts, the drama, the scientific wrestling. So I broke in, or I saw the business at 3 in 77. Talked with all the guys back then. I'd go weekly, so everybody knew me. If I wasn't there, it'd be weird. They'd wonder where I was. So I was just a fixture in that building every Monday night, and the business just absolutely intrigued me. And then later on, I ended up getting into it and training and whatnot, and in the 90s.
What were the crowds like at the Florida Championship Wrestling shows in those days?
Oh man, they were wild. I mean, old ladies with canes, smoke-filled arenas, and I was just a little kid running around the place, and my dad and my brother would come with me, and we'd be like, not the cheap seats, but like the first tier of the risers, and I wouldn't sit in my seat all night. I'd run all over the building and run over the baby faces and see Wahoo and Dusty and Jimmy Garvin and the Briscoes and Steve Kern and all that, and I would just run around like a maniac, taking pictures if I had a camera, and touching the baby faces as they go by, running away from the heels and all that. But the place was electric. I could still smell it. I could still feel it. Years later, I would go to rock shows there, and I would get that same feeling of that building. The only thing that really was disappointing was I was never able to work there. That was my MSG. That was that would have been a really big deal for me to wrestle in that building. But by the time I was training, it was purchased by the Jehovah's Witnesses, and it became a religious building, much like the Olympic Auditorium in California. It's a church as well, which is kind of strange because it was kind of like our church, so I guess it's apropos.
And it was this site, Olympic Auditorium was also the site of a lot of violence over the years, so that is weird.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you ever see the original Sheik in Florida?
Yeah, I did. He was a special attraction. He would come once in a great while. We saw Bobo there, Andre. The main guys were the ones I've already rattled off. The Kerns, the Grahams, Dusty, Bad Leroy Brown, Sweet Brown Sugar, Tony Atlas, Rocky Johnson. But the original Sheik, he'd come in once in a while, and he was definitely scary and crazy and weird, and but I liked the heels even at a young age. I know a lot of guys say that later on, but I just liked the business. I liked every aspect of it.
Were you intrigued by him even at that age? Because I remember I first saw him on that I Like to Hurt People VHS tape, and I kind of became obsessed with him ever since that day.
Yeah, same with me. I saw him on that I Like to Hurt People. I remember when you'd go to the video store and they had a special interest section, and in that special interest section they'd have a very limited amount of wrestling tapes, and they had like Grunt the Wrestling Movie. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I've seen that a million times.
Yeah, man. Mad Doug, Joe DeCurso and all that. But so I definitely saw that, and mainly with the Sheik, it was the magazines, you know, when I would see the bloody pictures, and that, as well as Puerto Rico, is just those gory, bloody pictures. And Florida was really bloody too. You know, they had a lot of scientific wrestling and really phenomenal technicians, but it was a pretty bloody territory as well, which, you know, that's what I grew up on. So, you know, that's, you know, it's what I saw growing up. So it's the type of wrestler I guess I became. Not so much like a deathmatch hardcore wrestler, but more of an old school hardcore wrestler, because that's what I grew up watching and what I grew up loving, you know.
And before I get on to how you actually got into the business, you said you were born in Amityville, New York. Is that where the Amityville Horror was based on, or was that a different place?
No, it is definitely the place. My Aunt Josephine, who's passed away now, she had a home, and there was an intercoastal canal. Well, a canal to the water, and her home was on this side, and then across the street she had a boathouse, and it was on that intercoastal, on that little canal, and on the other side of that canal was the Amityville Horror House. And we would go around on our bikes, and you know, sometimes there'd be like people camped out on the lawn or whatever, and the guy who blessed the house or baptized the house was Father White, and that was the person that baptized me.
Wow.
So it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, Amityville is a and I haven't been there, you know, I haven't been back there a lot or anything like that, but that's I remember, you know, early on I have a lot of memories. Even my aunt's home was like one of those old Scooby-Doo houses where it had passageways, like you could go into like back then they had sewing rooms and stuff. It was a pretty affluent neighborhood, and they had a really nice, beautiful home, but you could go into, like, you could open up a door and go into the bowels of the house and pop out somewhere else. It was really strange, so kind of spooky.
So how did you first actually become involved in the professional wrestling business?
Well, it's a funny thing is I went to a movie theater, and little did I know, it was so indie wrestling, little did I know, it was just, you know, it was just indie wrestling personified. Hack Myers, who was an ECW wrestler, the Extreme Shaw, was on a table selling gimmicks in the movie theater. Don't know how he got there, don't know why. And there was also a wrestler by the name of Chainsaw Liz Chase, and I believe she was like maybe one of the Glow Girls, or maybe, but she was a territory gal or whatever, and she was there, and she started sizing me up and, you know, telling me, boy, you look like a wrestler. Little did I know she was super carny and was just trying to get my money and all that. But I went to their, well, not Hacks, but I went to Liz's school, and it was in the backyard. It was soaking wet ring. It was terrible, and there was a bunch of guys there that didn't look like wrestlers. Excuse me, and I saw really quick that it wasn't for me, but at the time I was looking for a school. It was just serendipitous that I found that they found me rather. But I ended up seeing another independent show, and I had like looked into like Malenko's school, and the old guy, Boris Malenko, the dad, he had passed away just recently, and Glenn Jacobs Kane came out of that school, and I had looked into Al Snow's school, I had looked into a few others, and then I found this independent show, and I didn't know anybody that was on the show, but it looked like wrestling. It was hard hitting, it was snug, everything was performed properly. So I started to talk to these guys, and they were WCW enhancement talent. One of them was Casey Thompson. He always worked the Saturday night tapings and worked like with Sid and Steiners and Doom and all those guys. And then the other one was Blackheart Dave Johnson, and he was in the Blackhearts with Luna Vachon was their manager, and Dave Heath was an original Blackheart, Tom Nash. So I, you know, got with guys that had been around. They had been to Japan, they had been to Tri-States, they had been to Memphis, they had been around and were journeyman wrestlers, worked with everybody and all that. So they taught me the ropes, and more importantly, they taught me how to make a living in pro wrestling, which I don't think is really taught today. I mean, everybody just wants to know moves and all that stuff, but they taught me like how to survive. And I take those lessons that they told me, and I mean, to this day, and it's helped me out with negotiations, it's helped me get work, it's helped me act right. So, so it was those guys. Rusty Brooks was another one, the Pug, Alex Porto, who, worked in WWF, and Rusty had that famous match with Hulk Hogan on Saturday Superstars or something, and all that. Well, I don't know how famous it was. It was famous to us and Rusty, so, and definitely something that made him legit in our eyes, and he was. And Rusty taught me how to punch, and so I got with a good group of guys that knew the job and taught me the job.
And that's very important because, for instance, I was never trained that you had to shake everyone's hand, so I didn't realize once I got out of my first territory that was actually getting me heat for a few years, that I wasn't shaking each and every person's hand. So It's very good that your trainers taught you some of that stuff that sometimes people won't tell you for a long time, or until it's too late.
Yeah, and back then, I mean, it was 98, which doesn't seem like that long ago, but in wrestling years, it was a lifetime ago. They
wrestling was still at its peak then.
Yeah, and they didn't smarten you up, they smartened you up when you earned it. So, I mean, I remember when TV cameras would come to the school, because wrestling was huge, so like they would have the news come and all types of stuff, and I'm like, we're all working, and then the TV cameras would come and they would beat the hell out of you. And I didn't realize, like, oh my, and these guys were just getting theirs on TV and making sure everybody behind that screen believed what they were doing, So I learned a lot from those guys, and the lessons I learned from them, I think you'd probably get arrested today if you try to teach kids what they taught me. Like, you learn a clothesline by getting your nose almost broke, you don't raise your head and you get smashed in the face and blood goes everywhere. I mean, you'd probably get a lawsuit today, but back then we just rubbed some dirt on it and just got back in the ring,
Were they still partying pretty hard in those days when you were first breaking in?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the line that all the old timers used to say. We'd be in the locker room and I'd be so excited to wrestle, and they'd look at me and they'd go, "Kid, this is just what we do to get to the after party," and pretty soon I started saying the same thing.
Now, you started your career as a tag team, the Market Crashers, and evolved into the black market. Can you discuss that situation?
Yeah. So again, this is pro wrestling a lifetime ago. You walked into a school. If you walked into a school with another person and you drove together, well, you were a tag team. If you were a pizza delivery guy, well, oh, you're the pizza delivery guy. They threw a gimmick on you. They put you together with people. It was not really well thought out. It was just like, hey, that's you, whatever. The first time I got to work, it was we were at a Clewiston fair, and it was multiple nights. And the first night they called us the Stock Exchange. And I go, okay, we're the Stock Exchange. Hey, I guess we're the Stock Exchange. They told us to get suits like Big Bubba, and it was pretty easy for them to just, hey, do that. Okay, so that's what we did. The next night they called us the stock market. And we were like, oh, I thought we were the stock, whatever, just go out there. And then the third night they called us the Market Crashers. And I was like, I kind of like the Market Crashers. The fourth night, they called us the stock market. I said, hey, do you think we could be called the Market Crashers? And they're like, just go out there. Who cares? Whatever. And they just threw us out there. And so I kind of stuck with the Market Crashers on my own, asked them if we could keep that. And then after I thought, I had this thing in my head that with independent wrestling, we didn't have television. I guess I was kind of smart early. And I thought to myself, well, if the people don't know who I am, how can my name on the flyer resonate when they see me? So I thought, well, if we were NASDAQ and Dow Jones and they called us the Market Crashers, even if they didn't see our picture and then we walked out with the suits, they would know exactly who we were. So that's what I did, and they didn't care. They said, oh, cool, sounds great, whatever. So we were NASDAQ and Dow Jones, the Market Crashers. Later on, it became a little rough to cut the promos about the stocks, and it was kind of bored. It really was boring to us because it wasn't us. So we tried to street it up a little bit and turn into the black market, but that was much later.
Now, I noticed that you worked with both Earthquake and Typhoon, John Tenta and Fred Ottoman, in a company that was run by Penta and Prince Ikea. Was that in a tag team match, or did you face them in singles matches?
I met John Tenta online in '99, something like that. I'm kind of bad with dates, but we worked them, to answer your question, we worked them in a tag team multiple times. We worked them quite a bit. We were trained properly, so John kind of dug the fact that we worked old school style, and it was pretty easy to navigate with us within our matches. We were again, well trained. We were open to do anything. We were very respectful. We didn't open our mouths in the locker room. We just did what we were told. So John was really good to us. He really took care of us, put us in big matches, obviously with him and Typhoon in his company. So we were main event matches early on, and we performed well, and he rewarded us for it. Then he put us with the Bushwhackers for a stint. And I remember our team actually worked with the Bushwhackers in their final match, and it wasn't because of us, but Butch ended up getting pretty sick.
I think his foot was fused too eventually.
Yeah, his foot was fused, and they came up to us in the locker room, and they walked up and they said, "Look, guys, you guys are young." They saw our boots were brand new. I'm 208 now. I was about 250 at the time. My partner was 345 pounds. So they're like, "You guys are big. You guys are young. I could tell you're just starting out. Be careful. We're old. We've already done this. Take care of us." So we worked in that match, and we really took care of them, and basically passed the test. And after that happened, Luke started being very generous with us, and Luke asked us if we had been to Puerto Rico, and we obviously had not. We were just getting around Florida and doing pretty well there, and he sent us to Puerto Rico. He told us he was going to send us, and we were like, yeah, okay. We had already become a tad bit jaded with people telling us they were going to do stuff for us, so we just kind of, yeah, we'll believe it when we see it. And sure enough, a few weeks later, he called me up and he's like, "Call Carlos straight away, mate. You're going to Puerto Rico." And I was like, "Oh," and I honestly thought it was for a shot. And when I talked to Carlos, he was like, "How long can you come? A year?" And I was like, "Huh? Okay." So I said, "Let me call you back." And I talked to my partner, and we at the time we had jobs. We had to quit our jobs, and we went and joined the circus.
And how was the pay like for that? Did he upheld his deal for the whole year that you were there?
So actually Puerto Rico, we did it a little differently. And I'm not trying to put myself over or nothing, but maybe a little smarter, maybe a little more street smart than certain people. So I came in there and I thought to myself, well, I heard the horror stories of guys getting taken advantage of. So I thought to myself, well, what's going on there? Well, they're holding their pay, and then they can't get off the island. And if they can't get off the island because they can't afford it, then they're going to get whatever they give them. So I made sure to go to the island with money. And I made sure everybody knew I was on the island with money. I had them stop at the bank for me so I can make a deposit. I told them, they were like, "You're opening up a bank account?" And I said, "Yeah." So I opened up a bank account the first day, and they got squirrely with my money a couple times, but as soon as I let them know that I was leaving, they paid me right away. So it was only like, "Oh, we can't pay you this week," but they caught up real fast. To be honest, the paydays we were getting were very good. So, we broke out in Florida getting, I hear stories of guys getting $10 paydays and all that, and I totally sympathize with them, and I paid my dues without a doubt. I mean, we would go hours to set up a ring, 10 hours away, wrestle, get the shit kicked out of us, roll out, take the ring down, drive all the way home 10 hours for $50. I mean, but when we went to Puerto Rico, we got good money for our team, and I was very surprised, and we were able to live off of it. We were actually able to save. I think I left Puerto Rico with a pretty large surplus of money, and so I've got no complaints about that. I was just I thought it out before I went there and made sure to protect myself.
Who was booking for Carlos at that time?
Ooh, the dreaded Invader #1. So that was kind of odd. I had a few strange run-ins with him. Again, street smart right off the bat. The first night we were in there, we got off the flight. We were super nervous. They brought us to our place. We had been to the bank. We were running all around. We had to drive on the other side of the island, so we were tired. We were nervous. We wrestled our match, and our finish, we didn't perform it well, and it was our fault. We didn't perform it well. And he let us know, and he said, hey, we're getting rid of your finish. I didn't want to get rid of my finish. So I walked right up to him. I said, hey, can we take a walk? And he goes, okay. So I took a walk with him, and I said, listen, I'm very sorry that we didn't, because our finish was a side slam into a neck breaker. I would run and catch the neck breaker, and my partner would lift him up for the side slam. And it was, a version of 3D, because at the time, that was the biggest thing. And it was still the time of big double team move finishers. So, I went up to him and I said, listen, I'm very sorry. It's my fault, but I don't want to lose my finish. Tomorrow, please give me one more chance. If I don't perform it to your liking, I'll do anything you want. And he respected that. He was a real macho guy. He respected that, and he goes, okay. So the next night, I told my partner all day, I said, man, you got to lift this guy, lift him as much as you can, and we're going to lose our finisher. And I told him I made a deal with him, we'll do anything you say. So that night, my partner got him up as high as he could. I gave him the cutter. It, for, my vantage point, turned out beautiful. Went in the locker room. He didn't say a word to us. Right before we were about to leave, he walks out of the locker room, peeks his head back in, and he goes, "Your finish? Okay." And that was it. And we were able to to keep our finish. But I find with a guy like that the history he has and the macho attitude he has. I find the best thing to do is not cower and confront and be honest and be a man of your word. And it worked out that particular time,
I found that he was very arrogant too in IWA, and you were probably similar to me. We had heard only the rumors about Brody, but YouTube wasn't really around. And now if you search it, there's pages that'll pop up on what Invader did, but back in those days, it was still, you really didn't know what exactly happened.
Yeah, I was I still am. Bruiser Brody's my absolute top, my absolute favorite of all time. I think he was the greatest professional wrestler, the greatest performer of all time, the most believable of all time. So I had a pretty decent idea of what happened. I didn't know whose fault it was, what was what. I knew he was the guy. So yeah, you're correct. I didn't know the details, but there would be certain things like I had heat one time. There was a wrestler who we were doing a brawl, and there was a back and forth. And when there's a back and forth, as well as there's a rhythm to it. Yeah. And he started getting off that rhythm, and he started throwing live rounds. And the way I was taught was, you answer with a receipt. So I answered with a receipt, and I punched him, right in the nose because I knew it would water his eyes up. Well, I ended up breaking his nose. And I got a lot of heat for that, which I should have. I should have been more safe, but I was just trying to protect myself. Also, I'm a guy on this island that has 50-year-old men that look like bears, you know, just in this, look like they'll rip you apart. And, you know, there's guns and there's drugs and
everyone carries guns in their suitcase.
Yeah.
Because people don't know, the locals.
Yeah, and like they tell you, hey, don't stop at stoplights at night, just breeze through them and all that. So, you know, you're intimidated already, and then you're coming over there taking spots. You know, they don't like that. So my ears are up, you know, and I'm protecting myself. And I fought a lot when I was a kid. I'm no tough guy, but you know, I came through like the hardcore music scenes and things like that. So I've seen things too. When I hit the guy, he told the office, and I didn't rat him out. I didn't say, you know, it was because of that. So I go, okay, you know, I took my punishment. I'm sorry, this and that. Well, I worked him again, and when I worked him the next time, he said the same thing, and I didn't even throw a punch in the match. So I said, okay, this guy's trying to screw me. So when that happened, Invader said to me, amigo, let me give you your finish. And I said, okay. And he walked and he went into the shower, and I had to follow him in the shower for my finish. That was kind of freaky. That was kind of creepy and scary, but I didn't show any fear. I walked in there, I, you know, looked him right in the eye, listened to what he said, and he told me, he said, 1 potato is okay. 2 potatoes, not so good. 3 potatoes, you go the fuck home. And I said, okay. And I knew I didn't, but I didn't say, hey, I didn't do this, or he did that. I didn't say any of that. I just took it like a man, and I said, okay, sounds good. Please watch. So I just didn't throw punches. I threw forearms. I did throw that live punch, and I feel like it was, he deserved it, but yeah, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, he was macho, he was arrogant, he was intimidating, and he tried to be, but you know, that was what I needed, that's what I had to work with, so that's what I worked with. That was the ingredients that were there, so that's what I had. So that's, you know, I didn't run away from it. I did what I had to do to survive there, and I did what I had to do to keep my nose clean and you know, make money and learn, and you know, I learned a lot there.
I guess by the time I was there, business had dropped more because they didn't care about potatoes.
Yeah. So you were just delivering them all night, your potato and everything?
Yeah, there was some bad incidents there, and nobody said anything.
Oh, well. Yeah, business was good when we were there. We were able to, I was able to work in a faction with Kurt Hennig. They had Psychosis there. They had Rey Mysterio Jr. It was when Carlito Caribbean Cool was just a kid, and he was wrestling Ray Gonzalez every night. It was before IWA took over. IWA ended up coming on strong, and then they started beating us. But it was right when Abyss was there, and that, you know, his gimmick.
And Dutch was booking, I think.
Dutch was booking IWA, Invader was booking WWC, and yeah, it was a fun time. We had the wars there, like, you know, the Monday Night Wars at home, but you know, it was there. We would check them every time, and they would check us, and we'd see the boys on the street, and we'd be cool. But you know, it was our thing and their thing, and it was an interesting time. It was something I would never want to give up. I mean, I just learned so much when I was there, you know.
And for people that don't know, there was like 8 hours of local wrestling on TV at that time, 4 hours for each company plus WWE.
Yeah.
So the wrestling was crazy on that.
Yeah, it was crazy hot, and it was on their local channel. So it was, I mean, and the island's small. So, I mean, we would go places and people would know who we were. Like if you got on the island, they would throw your vignettes up there prior to your arrival. So as soon as you touched down, they knew they were expecting you, and everybody was a wrestling fan. And like I said, they had it on early morning, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and it was the highest rated show on the island. So it was a fun, interesting time. Just grateful I was able to experience that, you know, because it was the last remaining territory. I was able to hit that final territory, and you know, we were working 4 nights a week, and it was cool.
Any specific story about Kurt Hennig from that time?
I liked Kurt a lot. He was a genuine guy, really, really sincere, just smiled with his eyes, and just a real cool dude. One time, we would play poker, and one time we were playing poker, and he tied my shoelaces together as he was across the table from me as we were playing poker. I had no idea how he did it. So I'm laughing, no selling it, I see he got me, so I feel it, and I undo it, gets me again. Still don't know how he did it again to me. It was hilarious. Finally, I just busted out laughing, and I'm like, man, you stopped that, and we're cracking up laughing. I turn around, and my jeans were over my chair, and they were braided. And he did it. And I, till this day, and people say he's the greatest ripper of all time, him and Owen Hart. And I got to agree, I just never saw it coming. So he had these shoes on, and he was making his way home. And right before he went home, back in the day, we had, we'd have this baby oil gel, and we put it was like it was gel. It wasn't the liquid. Yeah. So we'd squirt it on and put it all on us. So I filled up his shoes with this baby oil gel. He didn't say a word. 2 years later, I see him, walks into a locker room. Joey gives me a big hug. As he pulls me in, he goes, "You son of a bitch, I squished and squeaked all the way home." And I knew, exactly what he was talking about. But he was a good dude, man. And I didn't know him really well. I'm not going to act like, we were best friends or anything. But when he passed away, it really did hurt, because he was just a good guy, man. He was just a real good guy, and he was super talented. And he didn't have to look at our matches and critique them. He didn't have to play poker with us. He didn't have to hang around and rib us and do all that stuff. He just did. He treated us like one of the boys, and I just appreciated that. He was just a good guy.
So you came back to the States, and I guess at some point after you were back, you met Kevin Sullivan?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it was then or prior, but like in the Florida scene, you would always run into Kevin Sullivan, you would run into Mike Graham, you'd run into Steve Kern, Jake the Snake Roberts, the Warlord. And so when you would see these guys, especially Jake, Steve Kern, Dusty, Kevin, Mike, you would grab them, well, not literally, but you would try to learn, so when I would see Kevin, I would just pick his brain, sit by him. If he was dipping, I'd go grab him some dip. Hey, you drinking a beer? I'd go grab him a beer, just to sit with him, listen to him, go over things that were in my brain, seeing if I was on the right path, trying to dissect matches, trying to dissect comebacks, trying to understand psychology, the hows, the whens, the whys, not what moves do you do, just the psychology was something that I was always into, the character development. So I met Kevin, and we just got along. Kevin is like, "Hey babe," and he was just
gotta do more of his accent.
"Hey babe," Kevin stays at my home all the time. We eat together. We travel together. We talk on the phone all the time. Kevin's really hugely, immensely such a big part of my knowledge. I would say that, he hasn't taught me everything he knows, but everything he's taught me is everything I know. I learned a few things on my own here or there, but Kevin is somebody that I can always go back to and go, "This happened, this is what I think, what do you think?" And, he's always honest with me, and he always lets me know, how to exploit a situation, to manipulate a situation for everybody's benefit. And the word manipulate is a funny word, and not to name drop, but Terry Funk told me that manipulate is not a bad word. It's what we do. And they've taught me, Terry's another one, is taught me how to manipulate situations in booking, taught me how to exploit things that happen naturally. So those guys are just extremely influential on me and my process and my style of booking, and Kevin especially, yeah, for sure. So he's still a lifeline to me. I call Kevin whenever I get in a snag, never to pull me directly out of it, because I don't want to not learn, but definitely to help me along. And Kevin does the, well, you know, or now you got it. You know, Kevin, when I come up with it on my own, he lets me know, so I know I'm on the right path. And if I am not on the right path, he gives me the, oh, do you think that? Or, you know, he'll ask me questions to kind of lead me, but he never just gives it to me. And I think that is him respecting me and understanding that if he gives it to me, knowing that I'm worth his knowledge, and the fact that when I actually come up with it, you know, it's what he wants for me. He doesn't want me he just doesn't want to hand feed it to me, because then I wouldn't respect the knowledge, then I wouldn't really absorb it. So I really appreciate the way Kevin teaches me.
And for the people that are lost in you talking about your booking right now, we're going to talk about it more later, but you are the main booker and owner of PCW Ultra, and Kevin Sullivan has worked with you for numerous years now, and we'll get into that. And just to get into this now, being, some people would say the Sheik too, but you were officially known as the Almighty Sheik. I guess you got the blessing from Sabu to do that gimmick, but what gave you the idea to start that gimmick?
So, at the time, me and my partner, you know, we were a main event tag team. We were main eventing in Florida. We were working with Full Impact Pro, which is now Evolve, and Sal Hamoy, Gabe Sapolsky from Ring of Honor fame. And so we were working as a main event tag team in Puerto Rico. We were working as a main event tag team in Florida. And my partner decided he was going to retire from professional wrestling. When he told me that, the first thing that I felt was a fear, because I wanted nothing more than to stay in professional wrestling. And I thought that if my partner, who was 6'3", 345 pounds, left, then I would be just a small guy in the tag team, or I would just be the guy from the tag team. And I knew enough about professional wrestling, and I was smart enough at that time to know that I needed to do something drastic. And I also knew that if I was going to do something drastic, I was going to need to do it pretty darn well and be very consistent with it, because I was going to be in my own swimming pool, completely changing. So I was in the Florida territory, if you will, and I was going to change from Joey Machete from the black market now, or NASDAQ from the Market Crashers. That was an easy transition. Turning into the Almighty Sheik, a foreign character, was going to be pretty difficult to get the people that were coming to see me weekly, monthly, yearly to accept that. So Steve Madison, who is a phenomenal wrestling talent. He worked with Steve Kern, and he was trained by Steve Kern, worked with the guys in the WWE. He rehabbed Eddie Guerrero. He's a brilliant wrestler, great trainer. Steve was running a show called EWE, and it was to be at a Cuban club that we had absolutely none of our regular fans. It was like a building that bought a show or something. So at the time, Pro Wrestling Hustle was pretty big in Japan. And Steve had an idea that we would have a fun show that we would try stuff out at that nobody would see. So it was, literally at the same exact time. So people would always tell me I was sadistic in the ring. I did things in a brutal manner. I knew that was the type of wrestling I liked. I knew that was the type of heat I liked. So I just decided to do this Sheik character. People would always say after 9/11, what are you? What nationality are you? Where were you in 9/11? And they would joke and make fun of me and stuff, because people never knew what ethnicity I was. So I said, okay, let me take that, and let me take the brutal nature of my work, and let me combine that, and let me do a Sheik gimmick. So I tried it out that night. It ended up getting over. And I was like, okay, wow, I got something. And I had a feeling that was not like what I was doing as a tag team. Granted, I was a baby face at that time, and I was getting that heel heat again, which I feel much more comfortable getting. But I felt something just a little different. I felt something a little special, a little more. So once I realized that there was something there and I liked it and I liked the way it felt and it felt really comfortable, I decided to talk to Sabu because I was trained right. I wanted to be respectful. So I went to Sabu and I asked Sabu, and he really didn't care, to be honest. He was just like, do what you dig. Thanks for asking, but do what you want. And at the time, I said, I want to be the Sheik, just the Sheik. And he said, okay, yeah, go ahead. And I don't know if he didn't think, he won't ever do anything with it, or he's just an indie guy, or whatever. But I ran with it, and he allowed me to do it. I ran with it, and I started to pick up steam. As I started to pick up steam, I met Ed Schumann. And that's kind of when I got involved in the NWA, and that's kind of when I became the Almighty Sheik. So I just changed the name after a long talk with Ed.
And speaking of the NWA, you were NWA Florida Champion, NWA Midwest Champion, NWA North American Champion, and NWA World Champion. Do you want to talk about some of the highlights of your NWA run, and then we'll get into the big World Championship run that I guess had some controversy?
Sure. Well, Ed Schumann found me online, and he's like, man, I really like this Sheik character, but you're missing a few things, and I can help you. I said, okay. My ears were open. I was always willing to listen to people. I was always willing to learn. He said, my boots were too dark. This was wrong. This was right. You need a name like the Noble Sheik or this or that. I said, okay. So Almighty isn't in Islam. But my thing was I wanted an Americanized word that was gonna piss people off. I wanted a word that was gonna piss Muslim people off. I didn't want anyone on my side. I was attacked like 15 times in this era, which is crazy. I mean, Arizona, Chicago, over and over and over down the line. I was attacked in multiple. I was Texas one time working with Carlito, so it really worked. I had some really good heat with the gimmick. Ed tuned me up, and Ed asked me if I wanted to join the NWA. At the time, the NWA was really in the tank, and I didn't have any desire to join the NWA. He showed me the value in it and told me that I didn't have to pay for it. I would come in through his license. I said, okay. I ended up, developing a friendship with Ed. I ended up developing trust with Ed, and he was a really smart guy. He's now passed away. He was a big mentor to me. I loved him so much, and he really helped me a lot. So I had trusted Ed, and I went in to the NWA. My belt at my company was the Florida title that I was holding. So once I did that, Ed set it up for the Midwest Championship, then set it up for the North American Championship, and then he passed away. His dream was to get me to the NWA World title. To be honest, it wasn't necessarily my dream. It wasn't like something I needed to have, or something that I needed to have happen for me. It was more of an act of completion for Ed to kind of finish up our business together and give him the nod that finally I got it. But I really went up the rankings in a working class way, which I'm very proud of. The state belt, the regional belt, the intercontinental belt, the world belt. And at that time, prior to me getting the world belt, I was being courted by Japan, and they wanted me. At the time, I had a lot of steam on me. I was really hot. I was one of the few heels in the States that was a real heel getting real heat. And so I was in pretty high demand, but I didn't want to go to Japan, as crazy as it sounds. I didn't want to go to Japan until I accomplished that piece of business with Ed. And furthermore, I knew that if I went to Japan, which was something that I did want, I knew that if I went to Japan as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, that would hold weight. And I knew that I would have a bit better time in Japan, more high-profile matches, and more importantly, more money. So, and that's really all I think about is the business of the situation. So the business of the situation told me to wait. So I waited. Ed ended up passing away, and then the NWA ended up finally, after kicking and scratching and clawing, they finally reluctantly kind of gave me the thing, and just really, they just weren't ready for as tenacious as I was going to be. They weren't ready for, as much of a hustler and a go-getter as I am. They thought I was just going to kind of do whatever, and then they were going to take it off me. But I brought the title back to Japan, which they didn't know about, that I was going to Japan. I held that in my back pocket, as I was taught to do by my trainers. And so once I got the belt, I was the first guy to bring the belt to Japan after a decade, which I thought was a great accomplishment. And then everything went everything became a shitstorm after that.
And what do you want to get into that? What happened there exactly?
Yeah, so I guess, at the time there was a group in California led by Dave Marquez, and Dave Marquez had a television show. And on his television show, he had the NWA World title. Dave Marquez was not a fan of mine, was not a fan of me. I just thought of him like a promoter. Like, I didn't think either way. If we were going to do business, we'll do business. If not, we don't. If he ripped me off, we wouldn't work together again. If he didn't, we would. I just thought of it like that, just business. Well, little did I know that Dave did not want that belt to leave NWA Hollywood. And rightfully so, from his perspective, because then he would have to fly in the champion. So it was cheaper for him to have it at home. It was cheaper for him to have a grasp on it, the thumb on the head of the champion and all that. And here was me coming in to pull that away from his television show, which was strictly revolving around this title. I didn't know what he was doing. That was his business. I was doing my business. So basically what happened was everybody kind of crossed hairs on their focus of doing business for themselves. And at the time, Adam Pearce was the champion, and Adam did not want to drop the belt to me. Personally, he didn't want to drop it to me. And I believe that maybe that wasn't true. I believe maybe he was, that was Dave Marquez's influence. I'm not sure. But he didn't want to drop it to me. Well, he dropped it to Colt Cabana. Nobody told Colt Cabana that he had to drop it to me in 3 weeks. So Colt saw it completely differently. Now, his perspective is, oh, I just got this thing. I'm gonna look like a fool having to drop it in 3 weeks. So he did not like me. I believe that was done by design because he was an indie darling. He had, connections with everybody. Prior to that, I was always cool with him. He was trying to get him to the show to where he dropped it was like pulling teeth. He missed the flight. This happened, that happened. Anyway, we ended up accomplishing it, and then I took the belt to Japan. Well, the first time I went to Japan, the Japanese office didn't want me to defend the belt, and I thought that was really odd. So I asked them why, and they said the NWA said no. And I said, well, that's kind of odd. Why would you not want to drop? Why would the belt be here for the first time in a decade and you not want it defended? So I didn't understand that. So I was in tag team matches against Masato Tanaka and Kenta Kakanumi and other guys. So I was in tag team matches the whole time. They liked me. They wanted me to come back. I called the NWA office, talking like, hey, the hometown guy does good. This is the type of business we're gonna do. they didn't want anything to do with it. They had their own agenda. I found it odd. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, they want to defend the belt. I was main eventing Corrigan Hall, and they wanted to do a title versus title match, and they were just very strange about it. I don't know, I'm not in their head, so I don't know why. But I did return, and I did the title versus title match, and they put me over for the 01 Japan World Heavyweight Championship. When I got home, it's like 8 years ago now, so I can't remember everything, but it was just a big shitstorm. And then they were like, right away wanted to take it off of me. And I was like, well, I'm doing this thing here, and then I had this very lucrative tour there, and they wanted me to do something where I dropped it to Adam after I had committed, and they knew I had committed to Japan. And I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing something with this much money, and you're wanting me to go to this town that's, I believe it was Indiana or something like that. No disrespect to Indiana, but it was like a, kind of a, small show with, a very minimal pay. And they had admitted to me that they weren't going to pay me my guarantee. And I found that odd. They were offering me $150 to go to a place and leave a lucrative tour of multiple thousands of dollars. So I had to decline. I said, listen, this is my chance right now. I'm making my money, and you knew that I was doing this. I agreed to it. And, it was a back and forth of, you've got to do this. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to make my money. And, they said, well, we're going to strip you of the title then. And I said, well, you got to do whatever you got to do. So they ended up stripping me of the title and publicly trying to bury my career. And it ended up lighting a fire under my career, and it ended up getting me booked multiple times in Canada, multiple times all over the States, to Australia, back to Japan. So it did really well for me. I ended up doing my stuff, and I made a decent amount of money. And yeah, they ended up just pulling the plug on the whole thing. I thought it was a dumb idea, but they got what they wanted. And I don't know why still, but it was just multiple people doing business for themselves, I think, and it just became a real big shitstorm. Then they made a documentary about me. I mean, I didn't say anything. I just kept dark and let them talk and do whatever they do. The more that they did, the more of a heel I became, and the more money I made. So I was like, okay, just keep talking, spell my name right, and keep it going for me. And that's how it happened. And then, there's still a big grudge to this day. And then I believe that's when Bruce Tharp came in, and there was some insurance things and all types of strange stuff. And basically, Bruce took him to court and took the NWA right out from under him, because they were so disorganized, and they were shady, and they were doing fraudulent insurance deals for, like, you would pay into them to get insurance for your show, but they really didn't have insurance. It was all phony numbers, and it was all, so that was the type of people we were dealing with. And I just did business for myself. I just got the money that I was promised from the dates that I had committed to. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that accused me of not holding up my end of the bargain in the NWA. People that don't know the whole story, people that, they think they know things, but that's the true story. I don't know where the heat stemmed from beyond they wanted the belt to stay in a certain spot, and I disrupted, their plans. But I just rode the wave the best I could, and I, again, referred back to my trainers and how to do business for myself, because this is a selfish business. We've got to look out for ourselves, and I just looked out for myself, and I knew that was the time where, the getting was good with the money, and I just made sure that, I made the money that I deserved, that I earned up until that point,
And for people that don't know who Bruce Tharp is, he's a lawyer by profession that ended up owning the NWA before Billy Corgan.
Correct.
And I think there is, if you search Bruce Starp, the Hannibal TV, I think Dave Penzer did an interview with him for us last year. And speaking of Billy Corgan, I guess he contacted you about being part of a wrestling reality TV show.
Yeah, so at that time, my name had a ton of controversy on it. And Billy likes controversy. So I had met Billy in Vegas, and we exchanged numbers. He was very cordial. He was very kind, super friendly. And he called me up out of the blue. It was when I had moved to California from Florida. And he's like, hey, Sheik, we're going to do a reality TV wrestling show. I was like, okay. I was a little old school for that. I was like, but sure. And he's like, I'm going to have a bunch of pitch meetings in Hollywood with some very heavy hitters. And I'll send you a schedule. If you can make it, I'd really like you to make it. I said, okay, that sounds like a great opportunity. If worse comes to worse, I'll be able to kind of get my toe into this world and kind of see how it works and understand it. And the next thing you know, that next week, I was in the Beverly Hills Hotel, and we did a quick meeting over brunch, I believe on a Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we were at FX and the William Morris Agency, and there was stars walking by and in these boardrooms with Hollywood elite and people that make things happen. And Billy would say something, and then I would say something, and then when we'd leave the meeting, he'd tell me, hey, that was really good. I really like the way you phrased that. I really like the way you worded that. And then the next meeting, he would say the same thing, and I was smart enough to know that he was kind of setting me up, and then boom, I'd say what I'd say and do my part in the meeting. We ended up getting picked up. We started this company in Chicago called Resistance Pro. The company was very strange. There was, the booking was very new age. Billy is a lot more traditional now, what he's doing with the NWA belt, and I'm actually a fan of what he's doing. But that stuff, there was some butting heads, not like fights or nothing like that, just like, really, do you think? And like, there were certain directions that I thought were odd, but Billy's more successful than anybody else that was in the room, so I tried to have an open mind and trust it. The company that finally picked it up, I could be wrong, but I think it was the people that did the Real World, not the One Direction, that's a boy band, or it's something, I can't remember. But they picked it up, and they came, and they were shooting, and they were doing all types of stuff, and it was extremely weird. And I was not into it at all. It was nothing that I would ever want to do again. It was very odd. The way everybody acted when the cameras were on, the way people acted towards me, the backstabbing that started happening, it was like wrestling like times a million as far as the politics and the backstabbing, and it was very, very weird. So that didn't last. They ended up, I believe, The Walking Dead became it was supposed to be on AMC. The Walking Dead became the biggest thing going, and then AMC dropped all of reality TV, and it got scrapped. So it was supposed to be on AMC, and then because of The Walking Dead success, they pulled the plug on it. But they had taped a bunch of stuff, matches, backstage, all of it from my vantage point, very strange and goofy, and nothing that I don't think, it wasn't wrestling people doing it. It was really weird.
And I appreciate what Billy Corgan is doing for the NWA, but they have a very bland champion now.
Yeah.
I would agree with their choice of champion. But just finally on Billy Corgan, he's such a big star from Smashing Pumpkins. Was that cool to kind of be on friendly terms with such a big superstar?
Yeah, for a good chunk of time, I was very close with Billy. I still am friends with him. Every once in a while we'll talk, but I was staying at his home when I was in Chicago. He'd invite me to every concert. I would go to, I'd watch them practice when they were in LA. We'd go eat after. So, and I still see him every once in a while. He's a good friend of mine, but extremely busy. He's kind of got a side gig with that band and all. and they just put out a new record. So he's doing his thing and everything. But yeah, Billy's will always be a friend, and it was super cool. I wasn't a big Smashing Pumpkins fan, and I'm a huge Clutch fan. They're my favorite band, so I would always rib Billy, and like for his birthday, I gave him a Clutch record, and I would always rib Billy about Clutch, and every time he would see me, he'd be like, "Oh God, this Clutch," and he's not a fan, and he would try to turn me on to certain bands that were just musically his taste and my taste differed, and but the thing I really respected most about him was his fascination for the old school. Even though his Resistance Pro booking didn't reflect that, it was very modern, and I think that's because the way he sees the business needing to evolve in his mind. But his respect for the old school, like Billy's got, I don't know if, he'd want me to say this or not, but he's got, tons of like old film and old photograph libraries and, just really, really interesting pieces of wrestling history that he's let me look at, like slides of like, candid shots of wrestling and from like the 30s and 40s and 50s and really cool stuff. So he respects the business, that's for sure. You can't say he doesn't respect the business. I think it goes, when you have a champion, I think a lot of it is who you can trust, and maybe, Billy has that relationship with Nick that, he could really trust him, or maybe he sees something we don't see, or maybe he has a reasoning behind it. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him in depth about it.
Well, if Billy Corgan sees this clip, which will be an individual clip, we would love to interview you sometime. You started Pro Wrestling Fusion in 2008 to 2011, and in later years, you went on to create PCW Ultra, which is one of the top independent promotions in the United States. Could you talk about the creation of PCW Ultra?
Sure. So I had the history of Pro Wrestling Fusion. At Pro Wrestling Fusion, we had Okada from New Japan before he was a star. We had multiple guys from Deep South and Florida Championship Wrestling and all that. So I had been booking there for quite a while. I'd been promoting multiple towns, so I had a pretty good grasp on what was going on. I had booked earlier, probably too early. I probably shouldn't have been booking on my first show for Suncoast Wrestling, but I did, and I cut my teeth there. And then some guys, I moved to California because I was all in Florida, and then I moved to California, and it was a weird thing because I was wrestling regularly, but I wasn't wrestling in California. So every weekend I would have to get on a flight. So I didn't really have anything going on in California. And these guys were going to the shows and they were trying to start a wrestling promotion. And it was two guys, and they were just going around, oh, we'd like to work with this guy, or we'd like to work with that guy. And I was like, I had spoken with them, and they had a couple. The one guy I spoke to, who's no longer with the company, he was asking me a few questions, and I was like, you really don't have it. You need to do this, or you need to do that. And he was just slightly off. So I was telling him what I would do, and the conversation kept circling around to, you can do that, you could do that, you could get him, and I'm like, yeah. So they had confidence in me, and they decided to bring me on as the booker. Early on, we all joined up to cut the company up and be all part owners, and then the one guy ended up leaving. And then me and the business portion of the company, Mike, we ended up moving forward together. And yeah, I just started it off, with all the knowledge, I was taught. I started it off very respectable, very tight, starting on time, setting up the arena perfectly, really good matches, everybody in their own lane, no similar things on the show, everything crescendo to the main event, super old school. The first match they saw was believable, and the guys looked like something, big muscular guys in the beginning, so wow, this is wrestling. And second match came out, fast-paced high flyers, these guys are small, oh my god, but look what they can do, and then into from there, everything leading up to the main event. I pulled some favors, got some people involved that helped me out to put the company on the map. And then by show 4, we ended up deciding to work with Rob Van Dam. So once we decided to work with Rob Van Dam, we went from 250 to 350 people on the first few shows, which is a tremendous draw for indie wrestling. We ended up just exploding out of this gym. So we had like 600 people in a 300 to 400 person capacity gym. The very next show, we found a new building, which is the building we're running currently. It's very large. It's a beautiful wrestling building. We have beer, we have food, concrete floors. You couldn't kill the building if you try. So we went into there, and I thought, man, it's going to take probably about a year, I'd say, to fill this place up. First show sellout. I was like, wow. So there was this big demand for what we were selling. And I'm the type of person where I don't look at other people's styles as far as how they run shows. I don't look at what they do because I don't like that sort of an influence on me. So basically, I just stick to what I feel is signature to me and my mindset. And I thought that would I think that would be unique to any area because it's signature of me personally. So I brought my style, which is influenced by Florida Championship Wrestling back to 1977, and Puerto Rico, which is obviously an extension of Florida Championship Wrestling, and ECW, which is another extension of Florida Championship Wrestling, just like PCW Ultra is an extension of Florida Championship Wrestling. So once Van Dam came on board, he became our champion, and then we ran with Rob for about 5 shows, I believe, or more, I can't remember, and we just started doing gangbuster business, and we got John Morrison involved, who is just an amazing talent. We ended up working with huge legends like the Great Muta, Stan Hansen, Kevin Sullivan, obviously, Haku. Then we got guys like Shane Strickland, who's I can't say enough good things about, and our main draw from the beginning to now, which is Pentagon Jr., Penta El Zero Miedo, and we have a huge Mexican fan base. We have a huge old school wrestling fan base, and I think we're basically the full spectrum of professional wrestling. So we have Japanese pro wrestling, we have European catch as catch can, we have American pro wrestling, we have Mexican lucha libre, and and I think and we have the top women wrestlers in the world, Tessa Blanchard, who I can't say enough good things about. And we really have a full spectrum of wrestling. So if a family of 5 walks into our building, they could all leave with a different favorite wrestler. And it's a really, really, it's not a really old school retro product. It's a very new age product. It's almost like I'd consider it the bridge between the old school and the new. It's all the fundamentals of the old school with the new school athleticism and fast pace, but it's very structured in old school formulas. And I think that that's our main key to success for sure.
And I'm still going to ask you some questions, but we are going to add some fan questions now because we're going to go live for a while. on the people watching this live, it's not going to be as good quality as in the full shoot, but we're doing this so we can add some of your questions in. So PCW Ultra, as we've been talking about, it's possibly the most popular company in California, definitely one of the top 2 for sure. You got a big show this Friday night. Do you want to start off by telling us about this Friday night's event?
Sure. This Friday night, we will be at the ILWU Memorial Hall. That's at 231 West C Street in Wilmington, California. It's just outside of Los Angeles, maybe 20 minutes from LAX. And the main event, it's called, the show is called Believe, and the main event is Pentagon Jr. versus Shane Strickland. It is... Shane Strickland is our light heavyweight champion. Pentagon Jr. is our heavyweight champion, and it's a champion versus champion match. We also have Tessa Blanchard defending the Ultra Women's the Ultra Women's Championship. We also have War Beast, which is myself and Fatu against the Border Patrol. We have
and War Beast just signed with Ring of Honor, right?
No.
No,
Okay. No, we have not. But oh yes, Brody King did. Yeah.
Oh, Brody King.
Yes. Brody King's in our too. He's in War Beast, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Brody King just signed with Ring of Honor. So, we've had Brody King sign. We've had Leo Rush go to WWE. Multiple. Alicia Warrington, one of our one of our backstage interviewers, she just got signed with Next. So, yeah, we've got a lot. We're using super good top tier talent. So, the show's really shaping up nicely. We have Road Warrior Animal. We like to have a legend. We like to have new age guys. We have great women's wrestling, violent wrestling. So we have a little hardcore, little lucha, great female wrestling.
Sami Callihan's coming too on Friday.
Sami Callihan against Brody King. That's going to be a fantastic match. The internet might explode. Super indie darling match. There's a lot of good talent on this show. We get a lot of talent from Mexico, Japan, Europe, and of course the United States. And so this show this week, this Friday, is going to be great. There's a huge pre-sale that we've had. We typically sell out. So if you are going to get any tickets, especially any of the platinum tickets, I would get them now because I believe there's 14 left last I checked. And then general admission, we'll just pack them in and then do standing room only. But I think there's like under 50 left. And we have a large building. So we're expecting, maybe anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 people, so it should be a really good show.
And of course, the Hannibal TV is going to be there to get some interviews, so we're looking forward to that. But I highly suggest, if you guys are in the area, to come out to it. And I understand you're going to be having an even bigger event next month for your big anniversary show.
That's correct. We're going to have our 3-year anniversary, and all of the people that are on the show, it's not announced yet. The only match we've announced so far is WWE's Evan Bourne, who Matt Seidel. He's going to face the winner of Pentagon Jr. and Shane Strickland. So that'll be our main event for anniversary. We're also going to have a huge legend. We last year we had one of the greatest Japanese legends of all time, the Great Muta, and this year we're going to have another huge legend that is comparable to the Great Muta. He's also maybe our 5th WWE Hall of Famer. So it's going to be a really incredible show. It's going to be our big 3-year anniversary bash. We're also going to have the Swerve podcast on there. We're going to do live podcast in our meet and greet. And our meet and greets are awesome. They're 2 hours long. The guys sign everything. You get free posters, trading cards, everything. So they're really cool. They're definitely worth the value of the platinum ticket. With the platinum ticket, you get the meet and greet for free, which, like I said, is 2 hours long. Of course, Road Warrior Animal will be at this meet and greet. And then the next meet and greet, you're just going to have to go to PCWUltra.com and wait for the announcements to be made publicly for that.
Someone on here tells you hello from Spokane.
Excellent.
And another guy's asking you if you could redo one match in your career, which would it be and why?
if I could redo it, as, you know, have another match, or because it was bad. Is it a redo, or?
They weren't that clear, so let's say because it was bad.
Well, if I had to do another match over again, wow, I don't know if I would want to really, because it took years off my life, but probably the most interesting match I've ever had was against Savio Vega for IWA Puerto Rico. I believe it was 2008 or 9, and it was the Globe of Death, and it was inside a steel ball. That it was absolutely insane, and it hurt real bad. The only other one that I would redo was a match with Yoji Sai in Korakuen Hall for the NWA and 01. It was a double championship main event. I would redo that one for the simple fact to feel that crowd again, to feel that match the way I felt after the victory. It was an amazing feeling with the Japanese press and all that. It was definitely a highlight of my career.
Who was your favorite wrestler to work with?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of them. There's guys that maybe a lot of people don't know, like Steve Madison, who was just super easy, Tommy Taylor from the UK. But I would say, as far as nemesis, Savio Vega, as far as just sheer brutality and just great psychology and people biting on everything. So Savio Vega is probably my favorite opponent of all time.
Have you talked to Bob Torbich lately?
I have not, but I don't reckon I ever will. He was the owner or the president of the NWA when I kind of burned it all down. So no, I don't think Bob would want to hear from me, nor would I want to call Bob.
I don't know if you want to tell this information to the public, but who makes your boots? Someone's asking.
Well, multiple people. So I go to Stagecoach. I haven't gone for a long time because I've got a bunch of pairs of boots. But Stagecoach, they're stiff. They don't do anything without charging you an arm and a leg, but their boots are without a doubt the best boots in the business, wrestlingboots.com. They're that old that they have wrestlingboots.com for a URL. And then there was a gentleman, and I'm not sure if he's still even around anymore, by the name of Jose Malagan. And he used to make my boots for me. And then, of course, he's gone. He doesn't make boots anymore. I don't know where he's at or if he's even around anymore. Bill Ash, who used to be BA Bar Boots or something like that, and they were out of Paris, Arkansas. But I only went to the top, the best of the best, because I wanted my equipment to be good and I didn't want it to fall apart. So if I had to recommend anyone that's still in business, it would be Stagecoach Wrestling Boots. They're the best. They make all the WWE guys. They're the best.
And you've talked about this in the full shoot, but not specific person, but is there any specific person that was your biggest inspiration in the industry?
Bruiser Brody. I did the Sheik character, and a lot of people would like to think that I was a huge fan of the Sheik, and I did the character more out of necessity, but Bruiser Brody all day, every day. Just the greatest professional wrestler of all time. Nobody was more believable. Nobody was more solid. Nobody was scarier. I think he was the greatest of all time.
Someone is asking you, seeing how MMA and wrestling present their products similar, what do you think MMA could do to rejuvenate itself?
I didn't know MMA needed to rejuvenate itself, but if I had to give MMA any advice, it would be to continue with pro wrestling style promos. I think being able to sell a pay-per-view event like pro wrestling does. Look at Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a huge fan of professional wrestling, and Gorgeous George specifically, and Muhammad Ali sold boxing matches as, like a professional wrestler would. So I think to keep looking at pro wrestling, and I would say the era of the 70s, 80s, and 90s specifically, and sell pay-per-views like a pro wrestler, and you'll get some pay-per-view buys. But I don't think that they're suffering, are they?
Well, I know the UFC is not doing as good business as they used to, but I don't think they're suffering at all. And I actually think the promos in MMA are better overall than the promos in wrestling these days.
Currently, I agree with you, because the promos in wrestling today are all scripted and they all sound like it. And they all sound like they're coming from the same voice. So I agree with you. I don't really watch anything on television currently, and if I do watch wrestling, it's, for instance, this morning I watched, because Dynamite Kid passed away today. I watched the Dynamite Kid versus Stan Hansen, which is one of my absolute favorite matches of all time.
You talked about him a little bit in this shoot, but someone's asking memories of Ed Schumann.
Oh boy, Ed Schumann was one of my absolute favorite people of all time, and he will be one of my favorite people of this lifetime for sure. Ed was kind, he was generous, he was funny, and he was fat and sassy, as he used to say. And Ed just treated me like his son, and a funny memory that I have of Ed Schumann was Ed asked me one time about my shoe size, and he asked me about all these measurements, because he said that he wanted to protect my ankles, and they had this brand new sleeve that was going to protect my ankle, and he needed my measurements. So I gave him all the specific measurements he asked me for, and about a month later, a pair of wrestling boots showed up on my front doorstep. About a month later, another pair showed up. About a month later, another pair showed up, followed by gear, followed by robes. And Ed just kept purchasing things for me to make my presentation and my entrance grand, like he knew he wanted for me, and like he knew that I needed. And then Ed passed away, and when Ed passed away, he had a credit card that was only in his name, that his wife couldn't get penalized by, and on that credit card was all the bills unpaid for all of my boots. So that's one of my fondest memory of Ed, that he was a worker to the end, and he used his carniness for kindness, and he helped me out, and he protected his wife, and that kind of is Ed in a nutshell.
Current relationship with David Marquez?
I have no heat towards David Marquez. I think David Marquez has heat towards me. That's his own deal. I don't have a relationship with Dave Marquez. He runs a product in the same state. We basically serve up completely different things. If I want to be a prick, I would say Dave Marquez serves up hot dogs and I serve up filet mignon. But hey, I'm not a prick. I would never say that. But yeah, there's no relationship. I don't have a problem with him, nor would I have a problem sitting down and breaking bread with him. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Do you think the NWA will get a national TV deal next year?
I don't know if that's where they're going. If that's where they're going, with Billy Corgan at the helm, I don't see how they couldn't, because of his contacts and his celebrity. I don't think that would be hard. I was involved on something that Billy got TV for. It wasn't easy, but he still got it. So, if they want that, I think they'd be successful, and I think they could accomplish that for sure. Now, whether they do it or not, I don't know.
Best wrestler in the world right now besides Hannibal?
Well, now I gotta think. The best wrestler in the world today. If you want to go Okada,
Thoughts on the Dynamite Kid who just passed away?
I think it's a really sad story. I think that it's probably best that he was suffering for a really long time. I really wish his career and his life would have turned out differently, because he was a special performer. He was an innovator, absolutely incredible. His matches with Tiger Mask, I know it's very cliche to talk about his matches with Tiger Mask, but they stand up today. They're innovative today. He's just one of the greatest of all time. He wasn't a fantastic talker, so, he didn't have every single tool, but his in-ring ability was, man, it's hard to match it. I just wish that his story would have turned out differently. I wish he would have been there would have been a happy end to him, and I wish he would have been revered as a legend that we all knew he was. I wish he would have been loved and celebrated, because he was one of the greatest of all time.
Would you work for Howard Brody's Ring Warriors promotion?
Absolutely not. No way. Never, 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 never.
What do you think of Nick Gage?
I don't know Nick Gage. I've never been in a room with him, and I've never wrestled with him, so I don't really have anything to gauge that on.
Are the rumors true that you purchased the NWA World Belt that you used during your run?
That is not true. You don't purchase the NWA World Belt. You basically earn it by, your work. And because of all the controversy and what happened, you would know the answer to that question. I've heard that a few times from certain people, mainly jealous people, but no, you can't purchase the World Championship.
How would you rank Dan Severn among the NWA World Champions over the years?
I would rank him, as far as ability, very, very high. As far as marketability and promo, very, very low. I would think that Severn, Severn is vanilla, but I don't think he's apologetic about it. He's all business. I think he's a fantastic wrestler, shooter, and he's one of the toughest NWA World Champions of all time. But as far as drawing, I don't rate him as high as a Flair or a Harley or a Dusty or anything.
Well, he has drawn well for us in Great North Wrestling. The day that I defeated him, we had a good crowd, and he's coming back for us Saturday, May 4th in Smith Falls, Ontario. More information at greatnorthwrestling.ca. And this person says he didn't mean, did you purchase your title reign? Did you purchase the physical belt?
No, I didn't purchase the physical belt.
Do you have any cool stories from Japan?
Just about working. Japan was really the only place I've ever been to in the entire world, and I've been to quite a few places. It was the only place I've ever been to where I got culture shock. It was vastly different from the United States. But as far as stories go, I guess if I really thought about it hard, but I just was there to work, and I was there to make money, and I had fun in the ring. I had fun working with Steve Corino. I had fun working with Masato Tanaka. And it was really, really nice being in the country for weeks at a time. I got to kind of explore on my own and everything. The people there and the way they maneuver in the morning to go to work, and they all kind of come like a school of fish around and the way they drink at night till all hours of the night and everything, it's pretty strange. And I guess the best memories would be going out to sponsor dinners and the camaraderie and the good times and the laughing and the drinking with the bosses and everybody, and not knowing if you're eating and drinking with the mafia or not or whatever. That was pretty fun.
Someone asked us earlier, do you have any cool road stories?
Oh, wow. Those are always kind of a put you on the spot sort of thing. I remember, one time in Puerto Rico, we were supposed to be somewhere, and my partner said that he wanted to take a nap. My partner was always not unagreeable. Whenever he'd want to do something, he would just kind of annoy me and do something different. When I'd show up early. I'd always have my I's dotted and my T's crossed. And one time we had to show up somewhere, and he was just adamant he had to take a nap. So I, moved all the clocks and acted like, we had missed it by 2 hours. And, then been in planes, trains, and automobiles with so many people in so many different states and countries and places. I mean, if I really dug deep, I'd find something, but I can't think at the moment.
Was Tanaka stiff in the ring?
When I saw that roaring elbow or that, running, I believe it's called the roaring elbow, I thought it was just going to kill you. And no, I mean, maybe he's stiff with people he doesn't like, but he was good with me. The only thing I didn't enjoy about working Tanaka was he was so fast. He was just so quick, and that's just not the type of wrestler I am. I'm a methodical heel. So yeah, he was quick, but no, not stiff at all. There was some guys in Japan that were stiff, but not Tanaka.
Will you or have you ever wrestled Sabu?
I have wrestled Sabu. Yes, I have, and I would love to do it again. It was an easy night off for me. I thought it was a fun match.
Someone's asking if the Savio Vega match was your best match, and if you could talk a little more about your time in IWA.
I don't know if it was my best match. That's kind of for the fans to decide which match was best or not. But it was fun. It was memorable. IWA Puerto Rico was pretty cool. I enjoyed WWC a little bit more because when I went to IWA, it was kind of on the decline. So squirrely money situations every once in a while. But I know that Savio's a really honest guy. So when I would talk to Savio, he would take care of me. He was a man of his word, and he still is, and I really, really respect Savio Vega. But other people I dealt with to get my money certain times, there was a little bit of problems, but Savio always squared it away super easy, so I have nothing but respect for him. Savio's currently revamping the IWA. They just did, and they're going to start running shows again in Puerto Rico. I know they're going to start running Florida as well, so I'd be interested in going back for those guys, because like I said, Savio's always been very honest with me, and I've always had a good relationship with him, and good experiences with him.
Now, you talked about Adam Pearce a bit earlier, but do you have heat with him, someone's asking?
No, I don't have heat with anybody. I'm older, wiser. I've got a beautiful home life. Life's too short to have heat with anybody. I mean, if somebody's mad at me or somebody's got heat with me, that's on them. Adam's a really smart guy. He's sitting pretty well producing WWE TV right now. We all ended up doing something, we all went our respective ways, and we all are where we want to be. Adam's got a beautiful family. He's got a great career, so hats off to him. I got nothing but respect for him. What happened in the past is exactly that. It's in the past, and it is what it is. No big deal.
Thoughts on one of my least favorite wrestlers, Joey Ryan?
Me and Joey, we don't have heat at all. I've used Joey in my company a couple times. I just don't get it. I'm a little too old school. I just don't get it. I don't understand hey, this is a joke. I look to Bruiser Brody, and I always think, what would Bruiser Brody do in that situation? And that's just my mentality. What he does, is it right? Is it wrong? Again, that's not for me to decide. That's for the fans to decide. The way I think about wrestling, I'm not a fan of that.
Someone says they totally agree with you on Joey Ryan, and thoughts on Pro Wrestling Guerrilla?
I think Pro Wrestling Guerrilla is, it's a car crash style that is in the forefront today. I believe they're highly influential on professional wrestling. I think they have a very valuable brand. I think they're brilliant the way they branded their company. I just don't necessarily think that they're serving, what I'm serving, but I'm happy about that. I don't want anybody to serve what I serve. If I'm serving hamburgers, I want somebody to serve hot dogs. You know what I mean? If I'm serving hamburgers and you're down the street serving hamburgers too, well then now, it's just, I like having a different flavor. I feel like our championships mean more, but nobody can deny their popularity. You know, they're selling out places. They have a charm about them that, you know, they can sell out in 5 minutes, and hey, they're doing something right. So hats off to them. I speak to them once in a while. We discuss things, and you know, they're doing their thing and I'm doing my thing, and there's no heat. We're just all coexisting together.
Who was the worst talent you ever had to work with as a promoter?
That I booked? Wow. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything. I guess I don't know.
Maybe unreliability wise.
Ooh, unreliability. Well, that's a different story. Oh gosh.
A name that we might know.
Oh, Matt Riddle. Ooh, he's unreliable. He stiffed me for about 3 shows. I hate saying that out loud, but yeah, Matt, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. He was very unreliable for us. We had him booked a few times and advertised, and he just didn't care. He just took our booking and then just decided to not.
Here's a good question. What are the best ways to get heat, in your opinion, for today's wrestling audience that would lead to larger crowds?
Well, I think you have to get heat with your body. I think when people try to get heat vocally, like, oh, you big fat piece of shit, blah blah blah, you know, I think that's pretty cheesy. I like to look at a man and look at a woman. And a man, I would test his masculinity. A woman, I would scare her. So I'd like to get heat with my body in those sort of ways. Just calling the town a piece of crap or something, I wouldn't go that route. But yeah, I would test, like, for instance, if I'm in a crowd and there's a guy there, I might just pull him right out of his chair in front of his friends. That will just radiate through the entire building. Or I might just look at a female and then get back and then look at her again and then get back and then look at her a third time and take a step. She'll remember that and she'll take that home with her. I mean, if you develop moments that they're able to revisit, that's where you get that emotional connection. If you just do stuff to do it and you just jump onto the next thing, you're not going to get that immediate time where they can revisit. It's almost like if they see something and they turn to their buddy and go, oh my God, did you just see that? Or wow, we just experienced that, and you give them a minute. So I like to do stuff that gets people deeper than just your town stinks, or you're a fat person, or this or that. Plus, I don't like to do that, because if a woman is heavy and her son is asking her all week to take her to wrestling, and then she works extra and ends up taking her to wrestling, and then you call her fat right in front of her kid, it's going to disrespect her. She's not going to have a good time, and she's not going to take her son to wrestling anymore. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell tickets. We're trying to make an experience for people. But if you go to that woman and fall at her feet and ask for her help, and she tells you to screw off and gives you the finger, she's larger than life in front of her son, and she has a good time, and then she brings him back to buy a ticket to come back again. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell tickets. We're not trying to alienate fans. So you have to be very, very careful with the type of heat you do. And in today's landscape, it's even more difficult, because we're dealing with people that are so ultra sensitive. So you got to be really careful.
Well, you've been very generous about these fan questions, so I'm only going to ask one more, and then I'm going to close this off. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. A lot of the ones I didn't ask are in the chute, so it'll be released in about a month. And the last fan question I'll ask, someone's asking if you think there'll ever be a legit number 2 to WWE like WCW was.
Wow. I don't think so. I mean, I think the lead is so big now. I mean, it would have to be somebody who has the finances, the know-how, and the contacts and connections. I mean, you're looking at somebody like ROH, and ROH Sinclair is bigger than Vince, but wrestling is still the stepchild. They don't have all the clearances. You saw TNA, Panda Energy, have more money than Vince. but they couldn't get over him. He's just in a league of his own. He's above everyone, and I don't know. I think the number 2 company, to be honest, is going to be Next, and I think Next is probably going to surpass the WWE. It's the same company, but I think they're going to divide it in that way, and Next is going to be the new generation of professional wrestling.
And I'll give you guys my opinion on that. If I get signed by New Japan out of this training camp, I think New Japan will be a legit number 2 because they're expanding. So thank you. We're closing down this live stream, and we're going to finish off the shoot interview now. So do you want to remind us about your personal social media as well as PCW's?
Sure. PCW is at PCW Ultra on Twitter, at PCW Ultra on Instagram, PCW Ultra on Facebook, and PCWUltra.com, which is the hub for everything. You could watch us there. You could interact with us there. Me personally, I'm at Cult of War Beast. That's CVLTOFWARBEAST. Also, my website is allviolenceslegal.com. So my stuff isn't so as cut and dry as PCW Ultra, but you can always find me through anything PCW Ultra because everything that goes to there comes to me.
And is there anything you would like to say to your fans to close this off?
Sure. This is my 20th year in the professional wrestling business. I'd like to thank all the fans from all over the world. My fans in Japan, my fans in Canada, in Puerto Rico, in Mexico, and definitely in the United States. Thank you all for supporting me. Thank you all for watching the matches, buying a ticket, buying merch. 20 years in this business. It's been a really great ride. It's been super fun. And as they say, I couldn't have done it without you guys supporting me or you wanting to see me get beat up or to beat somebody. And I just really appreciate it. It allowed me to live my dream and travel the world as a working professional wrestler, and that's all I ever wanted to do in this life, and I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much, and I'm forever grateful.
And final question is for me. I know that you're not going to want to give out all your promotional secrets because you are involved in somewhat of promotional war around these areas, and you don't want to help out the other companies necessarily, but what's one of the biggest pieces of advice you could give to promoters out there as a successful full-time wrestling promoter?
Well, you have to train a crowd the proper way. You have to remain consistent. You can't change things over and over unless they're for the better, unless they're an improvement. And you have to do everything. Promoting is on the street, it's on the internet, it's on the television, it's on the radio, it's on paper, it's everywhere, every time. And every time you have a show, you have to go to bed the night before that show knowing that you did everything you could possibly do to fill up that building. And if you don't, then it's on you. I mean, if you draw out of a fluke, good for you, it won't happen every time. But if you've done everything you can possibly do and you still don't draw, at least you can sleep at night knowing that you did your due diligence and you busted your butt, and it's really out of respect to your crew and out of respect to your people, and that's a huge thing too, is you have to have a healthy culture within your business. You can't have a locker room or a staff that has cancers on it. So every time you see something that's rotten in Denmark, you have to get rid of it. You have to get rid of it, and you have to keep your culture fresh and clean and kind, and you have to have everybody with a team mentality, and you have to give everybody their due. You have to make sure everybody who wants to do something gets to do what they want to do, because sometimes people leave you for the simple fact that they wanted to do more. So you want to talk to your people and know what their motivation is and why they are, donating their time or working for small money or, doing what they do for you. You want to know this because you want to try to meet their expectations, and if you can't, you want to be brutally honest about that. This way, you didn't do something wrong without even knowing it. So you want to definitely do everything you possibly can, and definitely have a healthy locker room and staff, and make sure you're consistent and just bust your butt, because it is a lot of work. It's a thankless job, because whenever it's all wrong, it's your fault. Whenever it's all right, thanks everybody. Everybody was a team effort. But when it's all wrong, it all goes to you.
And when it's all right and you've done all the work, then the wrestlers want more money.
They definitely, if they see good things happening, the building wants more money. The sponsors want to give you less money. When it just starts to work, everybody wants an upheaval to make it not work. So yeah, it's a thankless job. It's a rough job. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but for some reason, we love this crazy business that we're in.
And when it's a bad house, they definitely won't take any less.
They certainly won't. They certainly won't.
Well, thanks a lot for speaking to us, and I really found this to be an interesting interview, and I hope that some new fans learn about your very accomplished career in this, and I wish you the best of luck with the future of PCW Ultra.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. I really, really appreciate the time and the platform.